Hello, my name is Socrates, and the concepts presented may offend you. A Letter Concerning Tolerance by Mitchell P. Coles. When you consider being around anything, there is little likelihood you will be in the presence of things that necessarily meet your expectations. When you wait for the bus, your driver may be late. When you get on the bus, your seat may be sticky. When you ask to get off, the driver may miss your stop. To accept things like this stands an important aspect of modern society, as you have only so much control over things and that your ability to affect them is determined by the hours you put into seeing the change. I ask you to listen to this negotiation, which stampedes through the minds of nearly 1 billion people every year, as last and that before it. This letter is concerning the toleration of people who consciously decide to participate in the neglect of their citizenship, to hold no bar to themselves as a member of the public with no acknowledgement to the reasons for personal autonomy in this democratic nation. If you have to be in the presence of others and that were to bother you, then your considerations of why you have the ability to be safe among them. Then one further, when you have to be in the presence of others, should not they be in at least a low respect, those who retain their citizenship through both social contract and legal obligations, those who not only fear calling the police, but as well stand against the expectations of coming to another's aid at a moment's notice, where in this section I declare these actions both cowardice and criminal, but state that were the obligations that others must serve and follow to maintain that you have not only the freedom to be safe, but to communicate your ideas in a first world nation and in such be able to explore the opportunities both social and academic. It was not well discussed in my elementary education, but the standard should have been worn for the students when the class had touched on the history of Canada and the world wars, that in such case you see something, you should do something. That was part of our identity, and not one word was spoken about that the Nazis both came to power democratically, and in their conquest has some nations stand impartial to this effort. Telling our students about this endeavor before they walk into their civics class, the notion of national identity should be touched upon. As a nation of peoples who would claim the deniability of racism for helping the freed slaves, could we not have reconciled with the events and their nature with the natives as we had done so willingly to help the Europeans and Africans who were to be put to the Nazi sword? National identity is taught, it is not found on the ground. It is not something you grow into with an individualistic society, as this has become. The very notion that Canadians are polite, nice, and respectful people is something that must not be coerced from them, but cannot be sanctioned by political parties as talking points when we as a people do not hold each other to any expectations revolving around the nature of our criminal justice system. Views around religious freedom and the exclusivity of different cultures to be permitted to walk through the doors of police stations where others do not. Then the concern of how we handle people who simply stand against police, almost indicating that they themselves are participants in such sordid affairs, which if to engage would have some degree of contempt towards the nature of freely speaking with the police, and then to wonder were their ability to be trusted as voters in the elections, and for what and who would gain from both their actions and opinions. With this in mind, there is reason to defer to litigators and the speculations of social conventions surrounding these behaviors, and the threat they pose to both people in the short term like victims of crimes, but in the long term deteriorating the effective law enforcement. The education system and the spectrum of politics devolving around these beliefs instead of founded thought and expectations when looking at child-rearing patterns and the construction of a society that if anything were to go wrong, or God forbid, have to leave the planet and survive in space socially without any basic expectations or conventions, that literally every culture in human history holding a more effective structure in the design and discussion of is the communities, no matter how big, had forums which only had an expectation of those who not only cared to simply attend but to hold the bar to others, and not only their participation, but to abide by the expectations discussed in these forums. Before the norm became the criticizing and slander of anyone who made you feel inadequate, there was the restraint taught by the consequences of the actions of any who would overstep their boundaries when approaching another, because if one person is harmed when a village guardsman said that if they have money, or wear nice clothes, or held any other insignificant factor to which the suffering of one citizen were reaped, then that is not only on the one who caused harm. Not only is it upon the guard who permitted the perpetrators into the village, but it is upon the village to make not only the standard for the ending of such occurrence, but to take responsibility for the being they permit into their village, their town, their nation, as not to see such events transpire again. These concerns are about not only the children of this nation and others, but wherein I interject to see that there is not one grain of salt worth measuring to one who would not only forgive one for their actions which harmed the life of a citizen, but to allow them to engage society with the consistency, as those who obeys not only the social contracts, the moral law, but the laws of the nation. Then to cultivate from the ashes we collect in our society, and create the same forums again which made our species known for its ability to rationalize and communicate. Where I state that one whom has acted will act again, I ask that each of you be more cautious of who you let walk among you. As evil arrives more quickly than it leaves, you and all stand responsible for not removing it. Sorry for the delay, catch you next week. Thanks for listening. Click the like or subscribe buttons to support this channel.